Well, for this edition of Tech Talk, I'm out riding a bike. Can you guess what the heck I'm riding? Give you a chance. Shoot a comment. Tell me your guess. So the wheels don't actually do anything, do they? They just has the one cover kind of thing, and suitcase bike. Woohoo!
Well, good morning. Today we are at our good friend Colin's house and we're doing the first service on his 890.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, one of the tough parts about being mobile is not everyone has a great driveway, and Colin is one of those people. Nowhere is it flat, so we've got the garage. At least there's a nice garage to hang out on and do the work. We also have a little helper here, which the dogs are not too keen on. This is Jack. And he likes to taunt the dogs, and he's just walking back and forth in front of the cab, and Brindy is losing her shit. What does the Brindy see? What does the Brindy see? What is it? Is that a deer? Is it a really big deer?
Well, this afternoon I got a little bit caught up on work, and we're going to get around to doing a project I've been behind on for a very long time. Funny story, again, always a funny story. 7 years ago, we went to Moab, and Stephanie had never ridden off-road before, so we went to find her a bike, and through negotiation and talking her out of buying a junker, we ended up doing a deal with a guy, and we bought the bike from him for $1,000. And we did all the work to him and gave him a guaranteed buyback of $2,500. So he just scored. We did like $2,000 or $3,000 worth of work and parts to restore his motorcycle so that Stephanie could use it in Moab, and then we sold it back to him. He ended up having it for several years, never used it again, and sold it through us to another friend. He never used it as well, and he said, "Can you come by, get it running, and so I can sell it?" I said, "Well, what's the buy it now price?" So we've got the old Deezer 400 back, and she's going to be my first, what I call the legend bikes. We're going to build a bunch of single thumpers to go along with the donkeys that we can have to use on our adventures and let friends use as well. The point I wanted to make with this thing is really cool is it still has Moab dirt on it from Stephanie's first dual sport trip to Moab. So it almost seems a shame to clean it off, but we're going to restore this bike and make it something really special. And amongst all the other things we have going on, I'm going to try and turn this thing around in a few weeks. I might be delusional. Follow along, see what happens. We got a very old, tired, and we're going to do some photos of it. DRZ 400 is going to be our first Legends bike. Stick tight and see what that looks like. Well, it's been about an hour, and I don't know if everything's gone to plan and all, but oops. Hope I get it back together. An idea. I thought I'd show you guys something about chain adjustment. A lot of manufacturers have very complicated sight lines on their swing arm, and Kawasaki is actually famous for not actually getting them even stamped on the thing right. So a long time ago, a friend of mine gave me a handy hint. He says the race team that he works for states that it's less important the lines on the side of the swing arm as the actual alignment of the chain. There are lots of gimmicks and there's lots of tools you can get to check that. But what we're concerned with here is when you look at the chain on that rear sprocket, is that if it's aligned correctly, it will depart the sprocket in a directly straight way, and you should be able to see all the way from here to the front sprocket. And if this wheel is crooked in any way, shape, or form, the chain will, as it leaves the sprocket, it will immediately depart and change direction. So if we look at it right now, you can actually tell that it is a little bit Oh, here's an example. We'll turn it, and you can see how just even the most minute deflection of the rear axle will pitch the chain in or out of alignment. So essentially, all you need to do is make sure that it leaves the sprocket and goes straight to the front, and you've got it. So I'm just gonna tweak this just a little bit, and that looks to be on the money. Because in gear, when I bang it ahead, it runs into the adjustment, and we're all good. I just have to tighten this all down. And even more, or equally as important, is chain adjustment. How much free play there is. Essentially, everyone checks it, but don't check it with the weight of the rider. So when you put the bike on the ground and you put the rider on it, it will change the deflection because the swing arm angle will change with the weight of the rider. So an educated guess is always, it's got to be a little bit looser. There are a few bikes though that will go the other way, that as the rider sits on it, the geometry will change the other way and it will get looser, but they're very, very rare. Anyway, we're going to give it a final check with the owner on the bike before we run away to make sure that that's good. I prefer a little loose. Our local roads are really bumpy, and if you hit a good bump, the suspension travels all the way up, and this gets banjo tight. It doesn't do each of the links any good, and it can even pull on the seal behind the countershaft sprocket and give it a little bit additional wear. If it were like super tight, I guess realistically you could actually shear that shaft right off. Well guys, a thought crossed my mind as we're here doing this ZX11 for a oil filter and a set of tires. A lot of people, like the tire that just came off, he was feeling kind of sheepish about it because it's not completely done, but the value in chasing after that last 10 bucks of your tire just isn't there. You remember when you were in school and you got your new supplies and you got that big wonderful new eraser? It had that supple little end, and you could then halfway through the year it's just ripping the pages because it doesn't do nothing. Well, that's what, like, the last half of your tire, it just doesn't stick anymore. It doesn't have that compliance. If you stick your thumbnail in the tire, you get that nice really gooey mark. That's because the depth of tread is actually very compliant, and that's what gives you your traction. So when you wait for this part here at the very end, quite often you're not getting the same level of grip. So if you pay $200 for your tire and you're down in the last 20%, you're running around on $20 worth of tires. And the damage that can happen when you ride off the edge of that tire way outdoes going after that last $5. And often it happens on a trip and you get stuck with whatever tire they had and full pop retail. So talking about tires, change them early. There's no shame in doing that. It's actually the best thing you can possibly do. I learned it a long time ago. Stop falling off a lot. So we had this one and we just did a valve check on it and an oil change, and it's here also to get the service light cleared. Most of the marquee motorcycle manufacturers are really adopting to the automotive style of trying to keep you off of the motorcycle by incorporating electronics and service reminders, service intervals, and service information that you need to be able to log online through their proprietary network. These proprietary service requirements, I think, is tantamount to extortion. I'm old school. I don't want rider aids. I don't want electronics in my bike. I don't want more systems that can break. That's just me as an old school mechanic. A lot of guys love the tech. They love their cruise control. They love adaptive fly-by-wire throttle control. Anyway, we do have the GS911. We will reset the service requirements for this BMW. So finally getting around to another project that's way overdue. We're putting the donkey back together, the one I sheared the tail off of in Mexico in all the whoops. And we're gonna dial this one in and get it all ready to go. The work just never stops, even when it is your own. Anyway, hopefully we get that all going and we'll have 3 donkeys ready here to go.